Hello, leader. I want to welcome you back to 5 Tips to Care for Your Crew, where I've been sharing 5 different ways that we can care for the ones that God has given us that we're leading to follow Jesus better. And we've been looking at it from the perspective of Romans chapter 12, where the Apostle Paul, he tells us that we want to lay down our lives as leaders, as believers in Jesus, on the altar of God so that we can become living sacrifices. And that's really what leadership is. It's becoming a sacrifice so that God can do what he wants to do. Later on in verse 13, Paul tells us that means to look out for ways that we can help God's people. And then he's really specific in verse 15 where he tells us to weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice. Care for the people that God's given us. And we've been talking about it, and there's 5 different ways that we can do that. We can do it by giving our time. We can be consistent in how and what we give. We can be transparent and authentic in what we're sharing and how we're leading. And we create an atmosphere of fun, that it's not just serious talk, but that there's fun with what we're talking about, how we're leading. And then the 5th thing that we want to talk about today is listening. We want to be good listeners. We want to be great listeners. The Hall of Fame baseball player Yogi Berra, who's really known more now for his quips and his quotes than he is his baseball playing, he said this. He said, "I can hear a lot just by listening." We want to be great listeners. We want to hear a lot by being a great listener. So why? Why do we listen? Well, in the Bible, in Proverbs chapter 18, the author, he tells us that when we're quick to answer, when we don't listen, that we bring folly, we bring shame upon ourselves. And we don't want to do that, right? We don't want to have shame on ourselves, on our family, on our business, on our job, on our church, on our school, whatever that place might be. We don't want to bring folly upon ourselves. We want to bring shame upon ourselves, but we want to bring glory and honor to everyone involved. And then in James chapter 1, he says that we need to be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. And so many times we flip that on its head where we're quick to speak, we're quick to anger, but we're really slow to listen. From a practical standpoint, we want to make sure that the reasons why we want to listen is that we want to be credible, right? Listening, when I listen to you, it conveys that you have worth, you have value. When you listen to me, I sense that I have worth, I have value. When you truly hear what I have to say. And also, it brings an exchange, right? It's not just me speaking, but you're hearing and listening, and so then you're going to share back with me, and there's just exchange that happens back and forth. So that's why we want to listen, that it brings credibility. We don't bring shame upon ourselves. The Bible tells us we want to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and it brings an exchange back and forth. So how do we become better listeners? Let me give you 5 quick things that you can do. The first one is eye contact, right? I want to see and hear you. And one of the ways that I can do that is I can put my phone, my device down. And in a group setting, a lot of times myself as a leader, I'm using that device to help kind of lead, but whether it's reading scripture or going through a discussion guide. But when I put that down and I look at you and you look at me, it creates that dialogue, that exchange, that back and forth. It gives you credibility. You know that I'm really hearing and listening to you. But also, the second thing that I want to do is I want to summarize what you're saying. I want to summarize the conversation so that you have the opportunity to say back to me, well, yes, but, or no, that's right. That's exactly what I'm saying. The third thing that I want to do is I want to ask questions. I don't want to try to read your mind. So many times we try to assume what someone else is really saying when we're not asking that summarizing question. The fourth thing that we want to do is we don't want to think ahead. We don't want to assume again what someone is about to say, or we don't want to think ahead to the next question, but we really want to listen right now to what that person's saying. The 5th tip, which goes along with that, is thinking in our heads, thinking to ourselves, picturing in our mind what it is that's being said, making a mental picture of that conversation, putting yourself in that place so that I'm living right here, right now. I'm not back here or forward somewhere else, but I'm right there in the moment. Well, those are 5 things for us as leaders, but I'd also say that there's something that we need to help our group with. And when it comes to a group dynamic, that there's really kind of a couple of people that'll be on the fringes. There's the dominating person, the one who talks all the time, and then the one who kind of hides back out in the corner, who doesn't really want to put themselves out there. Well, we need to help both of them by drawing out that person who, and asking specific questions, not letting anyone off the hook on answering one question or another, so that that dominating person has to listen. And we might have to have a private conversation with them, but we want to help that flow of information, that exchange to go back and forth, so we're forcing that dominating person to stop and listen, and we're also forcing that person who wants to just kind of hide out in the corner to actually speak, because that is part of being a great leader, of teaching the people that God has given us to become better listeners themselves. Well, that's our tip for today. That's our tip, the last tip in this series of 5 tips to care for your crew. We want to become better listeners. And I want to encourage you to become a better leader, not just by listening, but by being intentional in your leadership, being intentional and growing in what God has given you, because God has given you people in your life who are looking to you to lead them. So become a better leader. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk again soon.